The head of US Indo-Pacific, Samuel Paparo, is travelling to Canberra to meet with Australian defence officials. As of recording time, that meeting has not yet occurred. But earlier, Richard Marles had travelled to Washington, D.C. for the first bilateral meeting of the new US Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. Shortly after that meeting, Hegseth made a speech to NATO on February 12th, in which he explained the US's need to shift away from European security. Take a look.
The United States faces consequential threats to our homeland. We must and we are focusing on security of our own borders. We also face a peer competitor in the communist Chinese with the capability and intent to threaten our homeland and core national interests in the Indo-Pacific. The U.S. is prioritizing deterring war with China in the Pacific, recognizing the reality of scarcity and making the resourcing trade-offs to ensure deterrence does not fail.
Chenlung, so how significant was Hegseth's speech there for this region and also the choice of Australia as his first bilateral counterpart meeting?
I think the speech by the new defense minister in Munich, I assume, is exactly is the point that now the U.S. want to concentrate all its military resources and get away from the old entanglement that they have in Europe. They are in the Hegseth speech, he's mentioning that the European will have to increase its defense budget to 5% and have to take care of what's happening in Europe. That means the crisis in Ukraine. And what Hegseth is saying that the U.S. want to move and concentrate all its military resources in Indo-Pacific. I think that's the point why he's making, and that is the reason why he want to meet with the defense minister of Australia, and also I think they want to increase its military cooperation with Japan. I think now it's something that the Trump administration, we're going to see the new policy shift.
And Wen-ti, so did you read, these signals, are they very, very clear now? Because there had been a lot of consternation and worries about whether Trump 2.0 would carry on Biden's alliances and focus on the Indo-Pacific. Is the signal very clear? Is there now nothing to worry about?
Signal is clear from the Pentagon. The signal is less unambiguous clear from the Trump administration as a whole. So I guess it's a two-tier answer to this. Clearly, from what we see from the new defense secretary from the U.S. side, what we're seeing is that the defense ministry in the U.S. tried to show that it is committed to the Indo-Pacific region in general, and that it is committed to the continued viability of AUKUS in specific. And that is why when the new defense secretary chooses Australia to be the site of his first bilateral meeting since swearing in, is trying to say that U.S. will still treat friends differently from how it treats foes and other bystanders. That Australia, having had what they call 100 years of friendship with America, having gone to every single international conflict with America over the last 70, 80 years, that means something still to the American servicemen and women. I think that's the overall message they're trying to drive through. And of course, AUKUS being the crown jewel of US, Australia, UK defense cooperation today needs that kind of political symbolism to continue sustain the momentum going forward.
And so, what do you read into Paparo's visit to Canberra? Does it help to reinforce that commitment?
I think for the U.S. defense ministers with its Australian counterpart, that's on the policy level. But in operational level, it's done through Indo-Pacific Command that is going to take concrete measures how Australia is going to integrate in the whole operational plan of the U.S., right?
Right. Now, moving to the Cook Islands, the Pacific nation says it will release full details of its comprehensive strategic partnership signed with China. Prime Minister Mark Brown told the media that China will provide his country with $4 billion one-time grant. The Cook Islands maintains a free association relationship with New Zealand, and all its people are New Zealand citizens. Wellington is obliged to defend. The Pacific nation also provides budget support.
该行动计划将为两国在经济、环境、文化、社会等领域合作提供路线图。 有利于双方共同推动各领域友好交流和务实合作，取得更多成果，更好地造福两国人民。中库之间的合作不针对第三方，也不应该受到第三方的干扰，这是中方的一贯立场。
Wen-ti, so there have been protests of reports say 400 people on the capital in Cook Island, not happy at the way the leader has negotiated this deal with China, although this protest was opposition-led. Now, New Zealand says it has concerns with what Brown did because they hadn't seen the agreements, even though they asked to review them in advance. Why did Cook Islands, do you think, not show New Zealand? Should it have shown New Zealand? Let them review these agreements.
Wow, that's obviously a politically challenging question to answer, but I think obviously if you are running Cook Island as a government, head of government there, I think you'll be managing pressure both domestic and international, so maybe sometime they will feel like it's easier to manage this new agreement with China if they present it only after the fact, presented after fait accompli. That way you minimize its exposure, discussion, controversy, and pushback beforehand. And that way you can ram it through.
What sort of controversy do you think there would be?
That remains to be seen. We need to go through the full text of the agreement for sure before we can come to a conclusion. But I'll imagine you involve some kind of quid pro quo, maybe some kind of economic and other system from China towards Cook Islands to start out with. Maybe exchange, they'll be having some kind of quote-unquote win-win cooperation between Cook Island and China in the areas of, let's say, low political sensitivity cooperation, such as the kind of police assistance and training agreement that you see China had with Solomon Island and other Pacific countries for sure. And then I think the hope then is for China, if that's what's actually in it, then the hope for China then will be to hope that it's going to induce over time a certain mission creep. That is, it may gradually spill over from lower sensitivity kind of security cooperation into medium and perhaps higher level sensitivity cooperation in defense security theaters. That over time may give China a greater stake, presence, as well as ability to perhaps deny and slow down Australia, New Zealand, and other broadly speaking Western countries' role in the Cook Islands neighborhoods regional order.
Chenlung, so do you believe that if it was low sensitivity, then why not show the agreements? If this was an arrangement that was expected of them in order to not make such a commotion, such a controversy about this, or was this about asserting their own sovereignty?
The Cook Island have the obligation, had to tell the New Zealand government what they have signed with China. If it's involved with the military or defense purpose, then they have to reveal it. And it's just like China's tried to take over Cook Islands and take advantages of its strategic locations.
Tell me a little bit more about the strategic location.
For Cook Island, that means that China would have a foothold in the South Pacific. I think those are the strategic considerations that the big power is having.
And what sort of influence do you think New Zealand could have over Cook Islands, Wen-ti? You talked about sort of low sensitivity agreements at first, but there is possibly deep sea mining and surveillance.
I mean, in our technology era, so many things can have dual-use implication for sure. Things that would seem initially innocuous and civilian could potentially down the road develop potentially military or military-adjacent purposes and usages as well. It's in that sense that, yes, you may start policing, you may start with maybe, let's say, telecommunication sector cooperation. Telecommunication at some time will give you capacity for electronic surveillance, for example, and that you may help them develop some kind of, let's say, naval navigation capacity that over time can give Chinese vessels ability to get familiarized itself with the local terrain, including underwater terrain, that may then give the ability to work underwater, deep water, deep undersea mining and other purposes for sure. So it's very hard to say. We don't want to, of course, maximize threat perception with every single move out of China, but suffice to say that a measure of transparency in the process of this development, such as Cook Island, for example, trying to communicate better with its, communicate more at least, with other regional states would be a reassuring move for sure.